A couple of nights ago, the Digital ID Petition, with almost 3 million signatures, was debated at Westminster Hall in Parliament by MPs from all parties across the board. So tonight we're going to talk about this debate. We're going to watch a little bit of it, not very much, I do promise you. We're going to talk about Josh Simons, who's the Cabinet Office Minister, who's actually pushing this bill forward and is responsible for it. And we're going to talk about the hidden hand behind the Labour Party, who is actually creating the policy and who is giving money to people in power. Okay, so before we get into all of that, thanks very much for being here once again on Andy Talks. Really do appreciate your company. We're almost on 100 subscribers now. Really do appreciate you. We are obviously a new channel. I do appreciate everyone subscribing. I do appreciate all your comments. I do look at them all. I do try to respond to them if I can do. So thanks very much for your participation and for actually being here. I really do value it. So let's get into it. Okay, so you'll all be aware that a couple of months and months ago now, this ID petition was launched, and then Keir Starmer, in the end of August, he made this big announcement about ID cards, and he said that it's going to be compulsory for everyone to go to work, and it's going to stop illegal immigrants. So the petition went wild. This is a petition that was online. It still is online at the moment. It's tantalisingly close to 3 million signatures. And I just wish another 32,000 people would come along and sign this. I like round numbers, it looks great. So if you haven't signed this petition yet, do head over to the page. There will be a link in the comments to it as well. So do head over and have a look at it. But very close to 3 million signatures. It had a response back on the 2nd of October from the government, as I've already said in a previous video. And it just said, we will introduce a digital ID within this Parliament to help tackle illegal immigration. Blah de blah. Now remember that when I come to a bit later on from the Tony Blair Institute. So just remember that we will introduce a digital ID in this Parliament, regardless of having 3 million people signed against it, regardless of any opposition, regardless of democratic process. This is what they're saying they're going to do. So let's get into it very quickly. So I'm going to just kick off this debate on here with a little bit from Robbie Moore, Conservative MP, who started the debate. So we're going to just watch that for a moment. I'm not going to subject you to too much of it, I do promise you. He is a very good speaker. He does make a good point on this. I just want to just give you a insight of just how many people were there. You can see this Parliament room here at Westminster Hall, absolutely rammed. As full as it's ever been. They had to squeeze people in, had to bring in extra chairs, etc., etc. And just to reiterate, this ID card bill was ID card petition was the 4th most signed petition in government petition history. So that's something to bear in mind. 3 million people. It is a large number of people. Now, considering all the people that don't sign petitions, all the people that don't have access to the information, can't find a petition, whatever it is, 3 million people is a lot. And I had a look on the map for it, and roughly 5,000 people, roughly in each constituency of approximately 100,000 have signed it. So all over the country is very similar figures. A very large turnout again signing this petition. So let's just give it a quick start here and see what Rob Moore is saying about it.
E-petition debate under your chairmanship. I beg to move that this House has considered e-petition 730194 relating to the introduction of mandatory digital ID cards. It is a pleasure to open the debate today on behalf of the Petitions Committee, and can I thank all organisations and individuals that I have met with in preparation for the debate. Sir Edward, nearly 3 million people have signed today's petition. It is the 4th most signed petition in the history of parliamentary e-petitions, comparable only to the recent petitions calling for a general election. It is obvious why the plans to bring in digital ID have provoked such an outrage. They are fundamentally un-British and strike at the core political traditions in this country. There are colleagues from all parties opposed to these measures. The Conservatives, the Greens, Reform, Lib Dems, Labour backbenchers, the SNP, Plaid Cymru, independent MPs and colleagues from Northern Ireland. In fact, even several ministers in this government have in the past voiced their opposition to compulsory identity documents, and I will give way.
Thank you, for the avoidance of doubt, Sir Edward, I'm only on this side of the House, because it's the Westminster Hall so packed, it's the only remaining chair. I have not defected to the Labour Party, and never will. Or to anyone else. Very quickly, can he confirm this was not in Labour's general election manifesto, so they have absolutely no electoral mandate to extend the surveillance state over the people of this country with this gimmick?
Sir Edward, I could not agree with my right honourable friend enough. So that begs the question, who actually is in favour of these proposals other than the Prime Minister himself? Despite the consistent opposition to identity documents, this is not the first time that they have been forced on the British public. The first ID card in this country came during the Second World War, with cards that could be demanded from the public by a police officer subject to...
Okay, so it went through like this, politician after politician after politician, basically coming out vociferously against the ID card scheme in one way or another, raising all the standard concerns from things like data security, about having centralised databases, about the encroachment of a totalitarian state, things like having to have a papers please society, having to use your ID card to buy a pint in a pub or a knife in a shop, or to justify yourself to public services, and all the usual things. It went on and on like this for 3.5 hours, effectively. So it was a long time, and all barring 3 people and the proposing, and the minister in charge of this, which is Joshua Simons, who we'll come on to in a moment. Everybody was against it one way or another. There were some people in the debate that were pro the one login system for the government services. I think that's a bad idea. I think one login is effectively ID cards by the back door. It's making it very difficult for many people to access simple services now that used to be easily accessible, like renewing your driving licence. I've had some problems with. I'm a company director myself, and there's issues around that. And I won't be using one login for that myself, and it was going to cost me money not to use it. This is where it's going to come in. But remaining on this petition debate, it went on like this for sort of 3.5 hours, where they went backwards and forwards, and various interruptions and stuff. But basically, every person coming out against the ID card scheme. And then towards the end of the debate, we got to Joshua Simons. Josh Simons is an MP elected to the Labour in 2024, having not been an MP before. He is part of the new recruits from then. He was formerly a member of Labour Together, which we are going to come on to in just a moment. So he used to be a director of Labour Together, even not just a member, but a director of it, which is a policy think tank. And before that, he worked for Meta, and before that he was a student and studied various things, which we'll come to very shortly. He is now fully signed up Blairite, effectively, pushing this digital ID agenda. He's being put forward as the younger member of the society, of the party, rather, only 32. He very quickly denounced Jeremy Corbyn in 2016, I think it was, whatever it was, before Corbyn fell, basically, after elections, and aligned himself with Keir Starmer and the new leadership there. So he is through and through a moderniser, inverted commas, i.e. he's along Tony Blair's line. He's technocrat, effectively. He likes top-down government, etc., etc. So we're just going to play a moment of video from him as he gets into defending the ID card scheme. And just before we get into that, actually, that throughout this debate, and we'll put a link to the entire debate if you're dull enough to watch it like I am. So you can scan through it yourself. I did watch the whole thing once, and I've watched parts of it several times now. But he didn't allow any questions, any interruptions on his statements at all, despite the fact that everybody else did. Everybody else took questions, as part of the procedure, in this kind of debating chamber here. But no, he went in and said, "I'm not going to take any questions. I'm not going to take any interruptions." There's a better word for it. I can't remember. It's gone out of my head now. And that effectively he went straight through and debated. Not debated. He dictated what the government is doing, what's going to happen, and what their stance is. So let me just play you a minute or two of that. Again, I'm not going to subject you to too much of it because I don't want you to fall asleep. It's not the most exciting thing in the world, but I think it's important just to get some context here.
Can I also thank honourable members from all sides for the thoughtful and respectful manner in which they've spoken in this debate. I will reference some of the contributions during my speech, but I won't take interventions as I've got limited time and a lot of important questions which I will endeavour to answer. I've got 11 minutes, I'm told. And to close, I want to do three things as I endeavour not to be hapless. First, to explain why we want to build this new national digital credential and the principles that will guide us as we do so. Second, to debunk some of the nonsense and myths surrounding this debate. And third, to make some commitments about how I, as the Minister, and we as a government will work with you and your constituents going forward. So let me start with why we're doing this. So often, my constituents in Makerfield, in Wigan, come to me with stories about how they have to fight against the system to do things that should be easy. The social care or send system, registering for a school place or ordering a new bin, paying taxes or accessing benefits, opening a bank account or buying a home. When millions of working people feel exhausted by making their household finances work or dealing with antisocial behaviour in their town, the last thing they need is to feel passed from agency to agency, call centre to call centre.
Well, so just to say on this, it's quite clear that the other MPs in the room, you can hear them being rowdy in the background. They don't believe that ID cards are necessary for anything you just mentioned. I don't believe they're necessary for anything you just mentioned either. We've managed perfectly fine for forever without having digital ID or ID cards to prove who we are. We have other ways of doing that. None of the things he's talked about are going to be improved by having a digital ID card. That is just a sales tactic, which he's very good at, and we'll come into in a moment. But let's just let him play a bit more.
And from one form to the next. It does not have to be this way. All over the world, countries have introduced national digital credentials that give people more control over their public services and ensure that everyone can access those services more easily.
So all over the world, there have been countries like India that have had huge data breaches. India's probably the biggest example of where digital ID has been rolled out on a massive scale. Have had huge data breaches, have had huge problems with that. Hundreds of millions of records being sold for a very few pounds on there. People are losing access to their money, to their lifestyle, etc., etc. Estonia again had problems as well. And in other countries, they're not doing the same thing that we're doing at the moment. They're not as far advanced as, or not as far entrenched in the ideological thinking, if I can get my words out, as the UK seems to be, with the exception of maybe China and one or two other countries. But let them just play a little bit more, sorry.
It puts the state in your pocket, like everything else we do online. Banking, shopping, organising community events.
Do you really want the state in your pocket? I'm quite happy when I go out not to have the state in my pocket. I don't need the state in my pocket. I'll run the state as far away as it possibly can be. I don't need to take it shopping with me. I don't need to take it to the school with me. I don't need to take it to anywhere in my life. No, if I want the state, I can reach out to it and bring it to myself. I can access it via telephone. I can access it via the internet. I can access it in a number of ways if I need to. But I do not need the state in my pocket.
Supporting our kids at school, And while the Government Digital Service has done phenomenal work over the last decade, the UK needs a step change to make the state and public services work harder for you to fit around you instead of forcing you to fit around them. Labour governments have a proud history of transforming our state and making it serve ordinary people. After the Second World War, the government built new public services like the NHS from the ground up. Harold Wilson grasped the white heat of technology to modernise the state. Tony Blair and Gordon Brown brought public services into the 21st century. Now we are doing the same, building the digital foundation of the British state and public services for decades to come. And I'm proud that we're building this vital public good for our country, not outsourcing it and not leaving it to private companies.
Okay, so they say they're not going to outsource it, but they're not going to build it themselves, are they? They don't have the technology themselves or the people that know how to build these things themselves. So they're going to have to bring in a company that does know how to do it, the people that do know how to do it. So already we've seen that one login has been partly developed and partly tested in Romania on unsecured servers, and is still being done such there. So there's already a lack of faith in the system to be secure as it is. But the government recently lost the records of 35,000 Afghans, or had them leaked rather, into the country, and there's been numerous concepts of data breaches, through things that the supposedly government are managing. But the concept that they have the skills and technology themselves to do it without private enterprise being involved is just ludicrous. It's just not going to happen, in my opinion.
Done right, it can leave a legacy we will be proud of in the years ahead. But done right, as several members have said, is vital. And my job is to make sure that we do it right. And that's why, since becoming the junior minister responsible for this, I've introduced 3 clear principles that will guide the system we build. First, inclusive. We will leave no person and no place behind. This is a public good, so it must be universally accessible. The people most excluded from our society, whether digitally or because they've not had a passport, are those we...
Okay, that's enough of him for a minute. You get the message. If you want to watch more of that, you can go. I'll put the link in the comments down below in the description, and you can pick it up from there. He goes on to give a pretty robust reasons why we should have digital ID. As you can imagine, that's his job. As he said, he's the junior cabinet minister, and he did have to correct himself even there. I think he's probably got lofty aspirations, maybe. But no, he is a junior cabinet minister in charge of the rollout of digital ID scheme. And we're going to talk more about him in just a moment. But before we do, I just want to go over some of my notes that we do. So he just mentioned about leaving no person behind, basically. Very famous Labour, particularly, slogan of leaving no one behind. So basically, they want to scoop up everybody in the country, no matter whether they're young or old, or whether they are elderly, infirm, disabled, have technology or don't have technology. They want to somehow scoop everybody into this digital ID net, one way or another. And the Children's Schools and Wellbeing Bill is the children's aspect of this, and that is also pushing its way through Parliament at the moment. But that is talking about giving children unique identifiers and children numbers that can be tracked with them until they get to the age where they can have ID cards, which might be 13. So again, they are literally talking about bringing everybody into this, and I mean everybody. How they do it, we don't know yet. We don't know, but that will be figured out over the next couple of years. They're not talking about doing it tomorrow. It is going to be a thing that comes in by 2029. If by some miracle this government do actually make it that far, because as things stand, that's pretty unlikely, I think, and hopefully they won't, and hopefully this will be scrapped and this will be an irrelevant conversation. But for now, this is where we are. This is the direction we're heading in. The government have a bigger majority, and they could potentially survive until 2029. They're talking about building a system with cutting-edge technologies. And and he was talking about their not doing it through the private sector. They're going to have to. It's just not realistic otherwise. They haven't got the skills themselves to do that. So he went on to talk about having huge digital inclusion, everyone involved in it. Nobody's going to be stopped and asked for their digital credentials by the police. Again, that seems highly improbable, doesn't it? Really, really unlikely that's going to be the case, because we already have to prove who we are to the police if they stop us and ask us who we are. And we can say no, and they can charge us with some offence for failing to declare who we are. And particularly if we get arrested for whatever, or if we get arrested for a potential crime or indictable offence, then we have to prove who we are, and we have to give DNA and everything else to the police. And that can be scrubbed later on. Supposedly it's scrubbed. I don't know if it is or not. That's a different subject for another day. But it's unreasonable to think that the police will not ask you to provide your digital ID in certain circumstances. I think it's just really, really unlikely, despite what you're saying. I know that there will inevitably be a cause for that to happen, and that will be a cause to change the system so it does happen. And he went on to say about having no central databases, and they'll all be federated, and there'll only be access to strict people who can access it for certain reasons, all with permissions and all with legal firewalls in place. But the reality is, that police, social services, education, health records, employment records, all the rest of it, there's going to be, provisionally, some need to connect all of those things. And that'll connect back to our central ID, and that'll connect back to our interactions with our local authority, to the benefits agency, to the universal credit, to whoever we have to interact with using this digital ID system. And so anybody who wants to investigate this for any reason will very, very easily, and obviously necessarily, have a connection between each service. And that will be a definite. That will not be something that's going to be talked about in 5 years' time. There's no point in doing this if you can't connect it somehow. And just think about it. There's no reason to have a digital ID card at all if they're not connecting the dots and connecting your records and pulling everything together. There may not, at the moment, be centralised databases. But all they have to do is build a connector, a bridge from one database to another. Very, very simple for the people that know how to do this. And once these start connecting and start being bridged and unifying your, say, universal credit record with your council tax record, with your criminal record history, etc., these bridges will be built quite rapidly, I think. They are an inevitable part of it. Once the bridges are in place, you might as well have a big database in a central place, because once it's connected, anybody who hacks it, anybody who steals the information, will be able to get across these bridges. It's not realistic to think that these are going to somehow exist outside or in individual data centres and individual unconnected resources. It's just not realistic. That's not how it's going to work. They will be connected, even if they are, for the time being, remaining as separate databases. Once there's a connection, once there's a bridge there, it's easy to travel one to the other, isn't it? It's like trying to get across the River Thames. You couldn't do it without a boat or a bridge. And so once they've built the bridge, you can do it easily. It's a lot simpler than getting a boat across. You just get the bridge and you can drive across, walk across, whatever. So that'll be simple, and hackers will be able to do that just as easily as officials will be able to do that. So it's just not realistic. He's not going to be able to follow that through. Then he goes, it's going to be for the public good. It will benefit ordinary people. That people are going to want this. They're going to request it. They're going to ask for it. They're going to need it. I think that's highly questionable. I think that most people have quite clearly expressed that they don't want it already. We've already had that. We've already said they don't want it. And he went on in the same script then to say that that some people have said that he's under the control of a international elite or a globalist diktat. And then he took offence at that and threw a thing saying that it was an anti-Semitic comment. Anti-Semitic trope is what he actually said. Which I think is a very typical way for any Jewish guy to shut down a conversation and delegitimise any concerns that are there. I don't agree with this anti-Semitic at all. Absolutely nonsense. But, and we're going to come to this very, very shortly, I do think he is connected to the globalists. And I'm going to show you why in just a moment. And then finally went on to say about that there'll be legislative and parliamentary control over this, and so that there'll be very strict things in place to stop mission creep, etc., etc., etc. Again, it only takes a change of policy, it only takes a change of government, it only takes a change of minister, it only takes some manufactured crisis to create a need to connect one thing to another thing. Once the system is in place, connections are easy. And once it's all there and collected, it's going to be just unthinkable that this will not be used to connect the dots and put people together and do these things. It's just not realistic, is it? And if someone slightly more malevolent gets in, or like I said, if there's a crisis and they'll develop a crisis, so there's a need for it, it's almost guaranteed. Then that is that we'll have this huge database, Chinese style, which already shown it could be done. This is not an if it can be done; it can be done. We can see it. It is in China. It is there now. We say the technology isn't there. That's absolutely nonsense. The technology is absolutely there. It's on there of over 2 billion people in China, and in other countries around the world. It's also being rolled out gradually as well. To say the technology isn't there is just a false hope. It's unbelievable. And then he also said we live in a proud liberal parliamentary democracy, which then generated a fair bit of laughter in the chamber there. It said we'll never have a social credit system. We have existing data protection laws will stop us from all this data from going to places where it shouldn't go to. But as we already talked about, bridges and connectors, that's very unlikely that's going to really matter. It already happens in the UK as it is now. The social credit system, that may not happen yet. No one said it's going to happen yet. But we've already seen carbon labelling on some food packages, on some electricity bills, etc., etc. Carbon credits are very, very closely linked to social credits, and that will only work. The carbon credit, social credits thing, only work through this unique identifier pulling everybody together. Everyone with electric cars now, after their budget, being charged pence per mile, which means you're going to have to put trackers in cars to do that. And so the only solution to that problem will be trackers in cars. And every driver is going to be tracked. And at the moment it'll start with electric cars, very soon it will be all cars. And so we'll all be tracked where we've been and when we've been, with a little black box in our cars. It doesn't matter. They'll know where you've been in your vehicle at any point, and that's how they're going to track the mileage, I can guarantee it. And it was something that was raised in the debate. There are a number of people that raised all the issues, the thing that we've got about trial by jury, facial recognition issues, scrapping trial by jury rather, has been talked about in the last few days. Facial recognition, things that are going on. This is a big mission creep, a state creep, invasion of privacy, all being sold to us to protect us, of course, as it always is. People being arrested for social media posts. The Online Safety Act and the age verification nonsense that's going on at the moment, the massive bid to interrupt or stop end-to-end encryption so the government can spy on what you're doing any given moment. Nobody believes the government is not going to try and have mission creep in this. It's so unlikely. It's so unlikely, to say the least. Right, so that is that part of the discussion. So now we're going to just talk a little bit about Joshua Simons himself. I have never actually heard of him before yesterday, never seen him either coming out anywhere. So I decided, as I do, to do a bit of digging, and to look at what where he's come from, who he is, what he's about, etc., etc. And so I went on and I decided to Google him. Obviously, that's what we do, isn't it, in this day and age? And the first place I started to Google him was on this website, which is the Parliament UK website, on the MPs and Lords registered interests. It tells you all about them here, their career, their voting record, early day emotions. I did look through the voting record and stuff, difficult to make sense of unless you're in understanding what's going on there. And various other things on there, but I started off here with this registered interests. Okay, so registered interests are where basically MPs have been given money by somebody else for some other reason, and they have to declare it on a register of interest, which is done here. Okay, so I looked down here, and one of the top people on here, or the top person on here, is somebody called Francesca Perrin, who's paid him £30,000 only a couple of months ago on the 6th of October. I wonder why. It just says donations to support the work of or activities as an MP. Could be absolutely anything. Very strange, it had only just been promoted to this new role at the same time as a Cabinet Office Minister in charge of this digital ID stuff. So I'm just drawing that there, and I want to just say Francesca Perrin, I looked her up, and I also looked up the other big donor on here, which we'll come to in a moment, so Mr. Martin Taylor, who gave £47,000 in the 21st of November 2024. So he's had 77, 80 odd £1,000 worth of donations in the 18 months he's been there. That's not bad. On top of his already substantial ministerial and parliamentary salary. That's a nice little top up, isn't it? Now, I want my extra 30 grand as a donation from somebody for the work I do. I'd really appreciate it. In fact, if any of you guys want to give me 30 grand for my work, I'd really value that. Thanks very much. But no, why is this questionable, and why I am questioning it now, is that, we'll look at this one down here, Martin Taylor. Martin Taylor was he's a hedge fund manager, by the way, he's a hedge fund manager, and he was a founding funder of something called Labour Together, which is a think tank founded in 2015 and 16 that helps drive Labour policy, effectively. It was a really kind of anti-Corbyn unit that was designed to try and modernise Labour, bring it up to date and get it away from Corbyn. And so, Labour Together received this, was funded at the beginning. Well, one of the funders for it was this hedge fund manager called Martin Taylor. And then, but he's given Joshua here 47 grand then. And then this year, just a couple of months ago, Francesca Perrin, part of the Sainsbury's family, which we'll see in a second, has given him £30,000. And Francesca Perrin, and I googled her as well, because you have to follow these chains, don't you? I looked on Companies House this is for Labour Together Limited. Labour Together, some interesting names here. I'll put all the links in the comments a bit. Francesca Elizabeth Sainsbury Perrin, part of the Sainsbury's family as well, and she's also a director of some Sainsbury's Trust thing as well. So she is still a current director of Labour Together, has given him 30,000 quid for some reason. Now, why is this important, you're asking? No, why? And we'll come to the why in a moment, because this gets into the think tanks and the secret organisations that are behind the governments. And the fact is that, this chap, this Joshua, he has come pretty much out of nowhere, and suddenly become very prominent in British politics. And so he was formerly himself a director. Again, actually, I'll show you on there just to clarify. He was formerly also a director, along with Morgan Sweeney, communications director for Keir Starmer. But Josh Simons here was a secretary, basically on the board, a director of Labour Together until the 12th of November 2024, which is 6 months after he got elected to the Labour Party. So he remained there. So he's very, very heavily involved in this Labour Together movement, like I said, which is a left-wing think tank, a policy creation directional unit, some very, very big names in it, either in the past or now. And so Lisa Nandy down here as well, she was back in the early days when it first started, and various other names you may or may not recognise. I haven't looked at all these other names, it doesn't really matter. But the fact is, he is connected to the think tanks. And Josh Simons, he had also previously worked at Facebook. He had worked in Meta under their AI training thing. So basically what he did was as a research capacity rather. No, so he wasn't an AI programmer or trainer or whatever. No, he doesn't know how to program or code or whatever. But he was looking at how technology was influencing elections and how social media platforms and algorithms influence elections around the world and how it influenced public opinion. Now, so basically, he spent some time there, done 4 years, on this working with Meta, looking into that. Before that, he had a paid-for scholarship, effectively at Harvard, looking into similar things. And before that, he did some university in politics and stuff like that. So ultimately, he seems to be massaged through this left-wing way of being, and funded somehow through Harvard, and then got this job looking at AI and technology and how that influences populations when he was working at Meta, and he was there as a research doctor, effectively, not anything else context, and then he's come into Labour Together, and then he's come into the Labour Party directly. And now he's got this cabinet office position very quickly. So let's just move on to Labour Together. First of all, like I said, Labour Together, the left-wing think tank, founded 2016. We've just seen there how it's been funded by the same people that are funding Josh here now. And I do have to ask some questions here. That these people connected to Labour Together, they're giving him money because Labour Together, let's have a look at it. Okay, Labour Together. This is a Brit card, a progressive digital identity for Britain. You can download as a PDF if you so wish to. Again, I'll put this in the link in the description below shortly. But Labour Together, so again, they're talking about the whole thing for ID here. So we can't currently effectively stop people from living and working in our country illegally. I'm sorry, but we have done for a long time. For a very long time, in fact. We've been able to stop people, we're able to deport people, we just don't do it at the moment for various reasons. We could stop them by stopping the boats coming in. We could put the Navy in the sea. We could block it, that would be easy. But we said we can't effectively stop people from living and working in our country illegally. And nor can we efficiently support legal citizens or residents to exercise their rights. Now, I have never ever felt unable to exercise my right as a legal citizen of the UK. I've never had that as a problem. Have you? Didn't need an ID card for it, did we? No, quite. So again, it's on about the case of a Brit card, mandatory national identification that will be issued free of charge. That's very gracious of them, as always, to all those who have the right to live and work in the UK. Okay, whether are British-born nationals or legal migrants. We know that lots of legal migrants, and there's hundreds and thousands, in fact millions of them now, of illegal migrants that are allowed to have identity here. They will be given a Brit card or an ID card, including these 35,000 Afghans we talked about, which I do not agree with. I don't think it's a good thing to do, but that's a subject for a whole other day. So by introducing a mandatory, again, universal national identity credential, Brit card, the Labour government has the opportunity to build a new piece of civic infrastructure. And what words we see him using just now about building new civic infrastructure? He's using the same language from this. And now it's taken script out of here, and from this Labour Together document. This think tank, it's not elected, it works behind the scenes, that to influence the government policy. And so now we want to be very clear that these ideas aren't coming from government; they're coming from underneath or behind or above, whichever way you would look at it. They're influencing government policy and pushing it down, into it, and they are effectively buying their influence, or if you're looking at that way, through giving donations, so like Josh here, for his parliamentary work on top of his decent parliamentary salary already. And then it does bring into question about why they should get these donations to MPs. I don't think it should be happening, personally. I think they're paid enough already and they should be paid on performance. But again, that's a conversation for another day. it said here it will better support enforcement and migration rules. No, it wouldn't. It doesn't now. It's not going to in the future. No, people come here illegally. It's not going to get an ID card. We all know this. We know that's a hoax. It's disinformation, misinformation. It's a lie, basically. It's not going to do anything about that. It's not going to protect vulnerable British citizens from being wrongly denied their rights, because we're not wrongly denied our rights now. And I think it increases the chances of being denied your rights if your information is centralised, if there's a central point of control, and say you lose your ID card or someone steals your ID card, or the government thinks you've done something you shouldn't do and they stop your ID, and so they will automatically be denied their rights without any jury, without any trial. Just when they're trying to find somebody even. It might not even be criminal, it might be an accident, whatever it is, or suspicion of whatever. So I think it increases the likelihood of being denied our rights. But so it would end their identity exclusion, resolving uncertainty and risk for those whose status is uncertain. No, it wouldn't. No, it wouldn't. We already know who's in the country, or we should do. If we don't, neglect from the government's point of view. We have decent borders, we have an ocean between us, we can easily stop that off, and we can easily find out who's here, and we can easily send people back. That's not a difficult thing to do. And then it goes on and on and on. I'm not going to go through all of it because it is quite long-winded. You can read it in your own time if you want to. Integrated in one login system here in the Government UK wallet. I've said many times, one login is ID by the back door. It's not even very back door, it's right in your face. If you sign up for one login, you might as well have an ID card. You might as well hand over your freedoms and no rights now, because they will find you from everything. It's convenient, it's great. I'm a company director myself. I will not be using one login to do the verification business. And we need to steer clear of one login as well. That is the ID card, and this is the thing we have to avoid, isn't it? And then it goes on and on about very significant things. The point here that it's that these policies come from Labour Together. Labour Together, potentially influenced by Mr. Blair. Very similar ideologies, very similar on the Tony Blair Institute, on this Institute.global website. They are very closely aligned, very closely matched. Josh Simons has done talks and spoken for Tony Blair or at the Tony Blair Institute. I don't know if he's a member. I can't prove that either way at the moment. Doesn't need to be. The association is there. The connections are obvious. So let's have a very, very, very quick look at Tony Blair. Don't want to talk about it anymore. Absolutely have to. Other than this article, 11th of January, written by Tony himself, supposedly. Very, very quickly, it says, I make you this confident prediction in January this year. In the not too distant future, British people will have their own unique digital identifier, and will make most transactions through their phones as citizens, with government and customers, with firms. This is a bit like WeChat in China. That's what it's reminding me of. This is exactly what WeChat does. WeChat in China is a universal application that gives them access to their lives and their payments and their money and their freedoms, and also tells the government everything they're doing. Think about it. Okay. Very quickly scroll down here again. You can read this in your own time if you want to. They're trying to simplify it here, saying it's like using Google Maps. It's not like using Google Maps at all. Google Maps, although it does track you quite clearly because it knows where you've been and what you've done, it's a voluntary thing. We can delete our data on there if we want to. We can sign out of it. We can not use it. We can do something else. So it's not the same at all, and it's not mandatory. So that's, we have an opt out of that. Okay, in this world, so many scary respects. Is this world scary in many respects? Absolutely. Most technology, including artificial intelligence, or AI, is general purpose technology. It can be used for good or ill. But as I say, when discussing the issue with the governments around the globe with whom my institute works, there is no point in debating whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. It is just a thing, possibly the thing. And history teaches us that what is invented by human ingenuity is rarely disinvented by human anxiety. Basically, that's a statement that says, go and F yourself. That this is a great idea. Any of your objections are invalid. That you're just anxious for the sake of it. That this is a great policy and nothing you can say will change our minds on it. Everything is a good thing or a bad thing. You can have a gun and shoot somebody in the head with it because you want to murder them. You can have the same gun and you can shoot somebody in the head because you're defending your family from being murdered by somebody else. You know, or you can have that gun and never use it and never touch it, or you can just not have a gun. All choices. But no, the good or bad is subjective, quite clearly, depending on the situation. But do we trust our governments to do the right thing? Does anyone trust the government? Really? I don't think we do we? I think it's very unlikely. Now, our governments aren't known for their kindness and their benevolence. They're known for malevolence rather than benevolence. And no, I don't think we should trust our government with that kind of authority or that kind of power. Really bad idea. Again, he goes on about immigration down here. We know it's a load of BS. Again, I'm skipping through this quite quickly. And then again, but suppose that before you access any part of the public services or welfare, you have to prove who you are and that you have a right to be in the country. And you could do this swiftly and conveniently in a single app. Now, I don't have any trouble doing it. I've never had any trouble doing it. If I want to go to welfare, I'll take my driving licence and my passport or utility bills or all the other nonsense you'd have to take to prove yourself anywhere else. Never had a problem doing it, nor have you. I've opened bank accounts fairly recently, taken a picture of my thing and sent it to the bank, sorted it out, done my little head scanning thing on the modern banking apps, that sorts it out. Also locally on their bank, not shared with the government and central stuff. And they delete their data after a few years, supposedly. But no, it's not going to. It's not so. We don't need it for welfare. We don't need it for services. We can already do that. No, if we lost it, I think and everyone's requiring a digital ID, it's going to be more difficult. If you lose your phone, you're going to be locked out of everything immediately, or if your phone breaks, or phone gets stolen, as happens lots of times in London at the moment. No, it says it will cut benefit fraud. I very much doubt it will. AI will do that. AI is the thing that will definitely cut benefit fraud. AI is the thing that's going to be watching everything. AI is the thing that's going to be piecing all this information together and putting a central report back to the government or back to the law enforcement or whoever else. AI will have access to all of this in their systems in the government so that they can pull together a record of who you are, much like Minority Report, and prevent future crimes. AI is going to take care of all that for you. Having all this information connected with little bridges that we talked about, is going to, it's going to make it so much simpler and so much easier. So AI will do all these things without a need for an ID card. So we just don't need it at all. Again, if we could use the potential facial recognition and data and DNA, nobody wants this. Nobody wants our faces scanned everywhere we go. We don't want to give our DNA over to the state, and that's just what it's inferring. It probably will. That'll be linked to our digital ID eventually. And obviously our face is already on there. Any of the biometrics we have to give in due course for it will be on there. It's highly likely they'll request our DNA at some point in the future, maybe even at birth. So that'll be on there forever as well as part of our unique identifier. But no, we don't want this. I don't know anybody that says, yeah, I'd love to have my face stored, I'd love to be monitored and surveyed everywhere I go. I feel so much more secure because of it all. I've never met anyone that said that. Honestly, I've never have. Yes, it might catch some criminals, but in reality, criminals will cover up the faces with using other methods. It's normal, everyday, law-abiding citizens that get affected by this. If someone has say outstanding driving fine that they're waiting for, whatever, or a court conviction they haven't turned up for, or something else that's on the periphery of legality. If you're walking through the middle of town, there's a facial recognition police van there, they can just jump out the van and arrest you. That's going to spot you and say, oh, he's wanted for missing a court date, or he's wanted for not paying a speeding fine, or whatever it is. And then they can papers please you and do what they want. That's what's happening with facial recognition. It's very much part of the surveillance state and AI, and that's what's happened already in China. It's what is happening there now. It is going on right now. And all about more control of your data. No, it doesn't. It gives them control over your data. You won't have any more control over your data. Not really. And then it's saying, oh yeah, we'll have lower taxes by reducing spending and improved outcomes. No, it's not. Absolutely not. That they will channel the money towards something else like they always do. It's not going to lower taxes. There's not a reason for lower taxes. Plenty of things will lower taxes, but not that. That's not one of the things that we want. Apart from the £2 billion it might cost to actually do it. So again, link to from the Labour Together, Josh Simons, donations he had, his job in the Parliament, links to that. Links to the Tony Blair Institute, 'cause he's also done work for them, as well. And then we have the Fabian Society. The Fabian Society is the future of the left since 1884 even. And it's probably the most draconian of secret societies, or the societies involved. This has been the real driving force. About 1 in 4 current Labour MPs are members of the Fabian Society, including Jeremy Corbyn. I was obviously not Labour anymore, but also remember, very much left-wing think tank, directs policy. They sit in government, they sit above government, they sit in the institutions. They are not in the elected MPs. They keep themselves very quiet, but they're in the machinery of government, and the machinery of government stays no matter who's in power. So it doesn't matter whether it's Labour, whether it's Tories, whether it's going to be Nigel Farage next time. These people are still in the power systems, and they're still influencing the people that are in power. I'm not going to know too much about them, and you can research it yourself. Plenty of stuff on YouTube. Take it or leave it if you want to. Very quick article here about what the Fabian Society is. It's one of Britain's largest political think tanks, founded in 1884, and influenced public opinion and policy on the left. Very highly involved in the Labour Party, in the creation of the Labour Party and stuff. One of its former logos was this wolf in sheep's clothing business. It had a previous one about with a tortoise, and said that the tortoise will always defeat you no matter what. They are about dominance, but slowly. They're not interested in revolutions. They're interested in slowly but surely, catchy monkey business. And this whole article here just talks a bit about this. I'll put a link to this in the description below. I do encourage people to research the Fabian Society. And again, just as a balancing one, there's one here about the so-called truth about the Fabian Society by a guy who's used to be in it, now not in it, but obviously very much sold out to them, or part of it, whichever way you look at it. But actually all Labour people are in or involved with the Fabian Society somehow. So just to round that off, so we have this ID card bill, or ID card proposal going through Parliament, which they're launching a consultation on in 2026, which you're supposedly going to be invited to take part in. I don't know about you, but I've never felt particularly included in consultations. It never made that much difference. They decided before it's even happened, really. But maybe I'll be wrong this time. I like to think I was. The junior minister in charge of this, Joshua Simons, been brought through the roots, a member of Labour Together, receiving money even today from Labour Together. Labour Together proposed this digital ID system along with Tony Blair Institute, no doubt with the Fabian Society as well. But they're bedfellows together. You might as well put them in the same pot and give it a shake, and take a pick and mix. It's like trying to separate one Cadbury's chocolate from another Cadbury's chocolate. They all taste the same. And that's the same for these guys. They're basically all the same. You could look at them all as wolf in sheep's clothing if you want to, I think. But the reality is that that they want to dominate and govern everybody. They are supporting that slowly catchy monkey thing. They are doing that. Starmer is in power. They are implementing all these very, very draconian state control measures, like the ID cards, like the Children Wellbeing Bill, like the Online Safety Act, like the data sharing thing they introduced earlier on this year, and thing after thing after thing after thing, where they are coming to take away your powers, take away your rights, and to give them rights to spy and monitor you. And it's all connected together. And this isn't just a standalone thing, it's all connected together. And as always, I encourage you to do your own research, come to your own conclusions about it. But if you've made it to this point, thanks very much. I do appreciate you being here. And I really value it. This is the second time I recorded this, because the first one I did an hour and a half and it had no audio on it when I finished it. So hopefully, fingers crossed, this one will do. It'll be done, it'll be sorted. Really appreciate your time. And please do comment below. Please do put a finish if you've got to the end of this. And like and subscribe as always. and I'll look forward to seeing you in the next one. Let me know what you're thinking. Okay, see you later, guys. Take care.